All right. Welcome to a Father's Flame podcast. Today we have a guest I'm excited to talk to. I guess I'm excited to talk to most of our guests, but this gentleman is working in the same area that and has the same passion essentially that I have. And so it's Larry Hagner. He is the CEO and founder of the Dad Edge community. He's building up fathers and men. He's been doing it for years. And Larry, I just want to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, my man. I appreciate you're doing good work, man. And I love. You mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know this is your show, but I'm so curious. I love the title of your show. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, so Father's Flame is I was pushed by a mentor to one work in like an area of life that where your passions and your proficiencies cross. And I'm like, okay, so I'm taking that and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, dude, I always like encouraging men. Right. That's been a passion of mine. I've been a believer for 22 years or so. And since then, that's what I do. And I'm like, well, that's just something I would do. And that's just exciting and fun and feel like it's a calling of God. And so I was like, how can I do that? And I was like, well, I could just speak about my experience. I'm married for, almost 15 years. We have 5 kids. And it's like one of the most amazing roller coasters I've been on has been being a father, right? And plus being married. And so Father's Flame was just me just thinking and processing like there's a piece of me that I want to keep lit, right? And it's like I always have to keep it lit. Um, and it like dwindles down. I've written a song about this, and then it's like you got to fan that flame and keep it going, like it's useful. But this is also the same thing I need to pass on to my sons and my daughters, which is um, important to us is our faith, right? And then there's other aspects to being a person, a human, a man or a woman that you want them to walk in wisdom with, their relationships, their family, wealth. That's also something that I'm always learning about, and fitness and like so a father's flame kind of is born out of that. It's like this piece of me that I need to keep going and keep working at, but also pass on and keep my kids kind of lit and fired. And then really also, and my wife, like I'm the leader of our home. And so I feel like a lot of responsibility does land on the dad and the father. And I think that's the way God designed it, right? It's just how we are. And so that's what a father's flame is essentially is like, I have failed in these faith, family, finances, and fitness. Like I have done well in those areas, but I've also failed in all those areas. And the point is, I tend to be someone who's open to share like my mistakes and with others like pretty easily. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm willing to share my mistakes, but I love learning from other men that like they're stronger in those areas than me. And so Father's Flame is hearing from successful men that also have mistakes, whatever they're willing to share, and we want to pass that on to fathers and the fathers that are coming behind us, and maybe the ones that even went before us. I've even found that there's men older than me that they've never really figured out their relationship to their kids. Like, well, why not figure that out today and do some healing and repairing? So in the long answer, that's kind of it. It's a father's flame is me trying to maintain being a godly man, living in this world, and then pass it on to the kids, and then blessing hopefully other people to hear a message that maybe their dad isn't teaching them. Right, we have all our dads are like all over the board. Like, what did they teach you? Like finances? Did they teach you how to like date? Did they teach you what did they teach you about your faith? Like there's really good dads and then there's very unskilled dads. And so I just want to get more information out there for people that maybe their dad just wasn't skilled at teaching them this thing. Well, let's have a place to talk about it. Plus, men are being torn down, in society. It's like there's this thing coming against men, and it's like we can't be ourselves. We have to be like women, right? We have to just talk this certain talk, and we're all equal. And I'm saying we're equal in value, but like we don't have any other strengths than women do. We're exactly just like women. So there's a lot of reasons behind it, but that, in a nutshell is I want to have a voice of truth that's going to impact people.
I love that, man. That is so cool, and such a fascinating and in depth explanation of it too. I appreciate all the detail. It's really cool, man. You're doing great work.
No, I appreciate you asking me that question and making me process that a little bit. Uh, uh, you get me fired up. I feel fired up when I kind of talk
Well,
about
that's
it.
it's a good
So
thing.
well, let's talk about the dad edge. What is the dad edge, Larry?
So the dad edge, it's funny. Are you talking about more or less the name, or are you talking about just in general, like what is it?
Yeah, in general, what is it, and what is the group,
Yeah.
and who's it for?
So yeah, so the group is who we are, right? The mission of the dad edge is to help men, husbands, fathers create the life and the relationships that they want under their own roof, and to give them the community and the training and the platform to learn those things and share those things through best demonstrated practices and crowdsource wisdom. And no, I didn't read that. And that's not our mission statement word for word, but that's pretty much what it is in a nutshell. The dad edge is, and I can explain that, even the name shift from where I started, which was Good Dad Project, to Dad Edge, if you want, and what that really
Yeah,
sort of means is, because there's all kinds of meaning behind it, but it's really, if you look at being a husband and a father, we help men in 5 dimensions. So we help them in what we call creating extraordinary marriage through elevated communication, connection, and intimacy. So that's one. Being a good father, right? Creating an environment of psychological safety, creating connections with your kids that are unbreakable, creating an opportunity, several opportunities over and over and over again, where your kids just pour everything, their heart and soul into conversations with you. There's nothing that they hold back. They feel very comfortable coming to their dad. There's 2 types of men that walk the earth, 2 types of fathers, and there's 2 types of kids, right? There is the kids that say, "Oh my gosh, this just happened to me. I need to call my dad." Or, "Oh my gosh, this just happened to me. My dad can never find out." And then that is in line with the 2 types of fathers, right? The type of father that knows and learns how to create this environment of psychological safety, and the dad that has no clue, right? He just, pours on guilt, shame, blame, and pain. Um, no man wants to do that, but usually what happens is we as men, and really just parents too, that's not just fathers, is we just repeat usually the patterns that we were raised with. I'm not saying that all patterns are bad, right? Not at all. There's a lot of good things. I think our generation of parents, Jeff, they did the best they could with what they got, and we're doing the best we can with what we have. But I would argue to say that now is the time more than ever that there's been more resources, that are literally at your fingertips at all times that you could go learn. The internet is a dangerous place, but it's a beautiful place because there's never been any moment in time where you could literally open up a device and have an answer to a question you've always wanted to know. Like I remember growing up, you had to go to the library and check, look at one of the encyclopedias, right?
yeah,
Um, but now, that's what the dad edge really does. We help men with those areas, with those 2 areas. We also help them with leadership skills, right? Because you lead yourself, you lead your family, lead your community. Then you have managing your personal finances, which is right in line with you. We really don't have um, that training either. That's why, like, if you look at the divorce rate, 51% divorce rate, well, 50% of divorces are actually due to money mismanagement and arguments and, different visions and that kind of thing. And then the final one is optimizing your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. If you look at those 5 areas, these are the 5 areas we get the least amount of training in. Like my son and I, like I am die hard about teaching my boys. I have 4 boys. These things that we teach in Dad Edge, conversational excellence, right? Emotional acuity, right? All these things that are so important in relationships, right? The things that's not taught in schools. My 16-year-old came home and he's like, Dad, he's like, we're learning polyellograms right now. When am I ever going to use a polyellogram? I was like, probably never. I was like, well, you know what you can use? You can use tactile empathy. You can use what we call, you can use mirroring, right? You can use generative questions, right? You can bring the best out in people by having best conversations with them. You can create an environment where people feel comfortable talking to you. You can do all those things. So those are the things you use on the daily. And I'm really keen on teaching my kids that. And going back to answer your question, I started Good Dad Project, and I started Good Dad Project 10 years ago, probably in one of the darkest places I've been, in my life. And I moved forward with really evolving Good Dad Project into a podcast and a movement, but the 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 name never really actually resonated with me because I literally kind of fell onto that name just by accident. And it never really resonated with me because it always ensued that I was always a project, or maybe I was broken, right? Or maybe if you're listening to this podcast, you're broken and you're a project, right? I would say as men, we're always unfinished, right? Like even God says that, we're unfinished men. But at the same time, what I do resonate with is having an edge, right? Is having an edge of knowing what to do in a situation, right? If you take Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you have a self-defense edge above anybody else who tries to mug you, right? As long as they don't,
Okay.
if they have skills or don't, you have an edge. The same thing is true for marriage. Same thing is true for fatherhood. The sad thing is this is where we flip this whole thing on its head, right? When it comes to being a man, husband, and father. This is what is this your full-time gig, by the way, Jeff?
No, this is not my full time gig. This is my
Okay.
side.
So what do you do full-time?
We're hunting for a business acquisition here in the next few months.
Okay.
So entrepreneurship.
Okay. So did you get a college education?
I kind of had one, and so
Okay.
I did like an associate of arts. I played 4 years of college soccer,
Okay.
and I kind of was just going for that at the time.
Perfect. We don't even need to talk anything professional. When did you start playing soccer?
Kindergarten.
Okay. So did you have a coach or not?
Yes, always had
Of course,
coaches, and then
of
my
course you
dad
did.
coached me in like 8th grade. Yeah,
Yeah. And of course you did, right? And we wouldn't expect anything
yeah,
less. We wouldn't expect our 5-year-olds to go out on the soccer field and be like, "Hey man, just go out there and figure it out. Best time of your whole life." Right? We wouldn't expect that in
be a
grade
mess.
school. Right? You wouldn't
Yeah,
even if you were in high school and you had no varsity coach and like, "Hey guys, just go out and play football. Best time of your whole life." You watch the Super Bowl, right? Everybody kind of knows it's a football. It's a round pigskin ball. You kick it through a big H, as Eddie Murphy said in Coming to America. But we don't expect that. And you get a college degree if that's your thing, because maybe you want to start a business, or you get an accounting degree because you want to be a CPA, right? Or you get an engineering degree because you want to do that. If you want to be a cop, you have to go be a cadet first, 990 hours of training. Anything that we've ever done and done it well, we've had training, right? We've had some sort of regimen that we followed. We've had some sort of educational journey that we have followed. Being a father and a husband, it's almost like, hey, don't worry, you'll figure it out. Best time of your whole life. Just and it's absolute craziness to me. Think of it this way: if before you get, if think of it this way, if you when you got your driver's license, you have to take a written test and then a practical, and then a police officer or somebody in law enforcement or somebody who's an authority figure basically signs off and says, yes, Jeff, you are capable, and we are going to give you the privilege of having a driver's license. You can drive safely from what we can see, right? When you get married, you apply for a marriage license and it comes in the mail and your pastor signs it, boom, you're done, right? Some, if you're Catholic faith like we are, there's some sort of marriage prep, but it's really not all that much. But think of it this way. If you if you want to get married, what if the requirement to get married was, okay, if you want to get married, we're going to take you through a little bit of coursework. It's going to take about 3 months. It's not every day or anything like that, but it's a weekly check-in. We're going to teach you 3 things. Number 1 is conversational excellence. Number 2, we're going to teach you the differences between women connect and communicate and the differences between men communicate and connect. Then we're going to teach you about core values and how to live within your core values as a married couple. And then we're going to teach you about love languages. So that way you're loving each other and the other person's love language the way they receive it, not the way you want to give it. And I'd also add in there some sort of broad financial money management of what it means to be married and manage your money. If you just did that, even if each one of those subjects were one class, I'm not a betting man, but I would guarantee the divorce rate would drop because people are going in with some sort of education on what do I do? Because part of the biggest frustration when we get emotionally charged about anything, think of anytime your kids trigger you, right? Everybody always says nobody makes me more angry than my kids. Well, it's because it's our raising our kids is so darn important to us, right? And second would be
Yeah.
like no one gets me angrier than my wife sometimes or my husband. That's because these relationships are so important to us. We do not want to screw them up. We want them to be the best that we can possibly be. And when we do hit speed bumps and we don't know what to do, we feel lost and we feel emotionally triggered. And this is when we lash out. So just think of how the world would change if we had just a little bit, just a tiny bit of training. And that's really what Dad Edge does provide.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that vision. I've thought of the same thing myself. Is like, and maybe I've heard this too. Like, we're jumping into the most important decisions of our life, like who you marry. Thankfully, like, people are going to church. At least sometimes there's marriage counseling and beforehand, pre-marriage counseling, and they had us read the five love languages. That's a mind blowing
Good.
book. If every
Yeah.
married couple probably needs to read that. Um, but you're right. Like, there's no 101 real class. Um, Yet this person, like, if you, even from a biblical standpoint, you're kind of making this lifelong covenant or commitment to, and you just don't know what you're doing. You don't know what's coming, and it's, oh, same with, and then parent, kids show up like a couple years later or whatever, and you're always learning on the fly. And actually, you know what? This is how I found you, Larry. Was a clip of you saying something like this. I was in a time, where I was struggling, and I had to be like 3 years ago, and then I saw it on TikTok, and it just was. You were just saying how I have never been a parent to a 14-year-old kid that's 14 years old and 16 days. Like, this is my first time experiencing this and learning that. Um, and so there's so much anyway. So credit to you, but there's so much about parenting. It's just so new, and it's like you're supposed to learn on the fly. But you're right. Have some kind of values that you hold to that you're teaching your kids. Um, So I love what you're doing. I love that your voice is out there, and this training sounds awesome. Do you guys actually offer like a premarital class, um, in any way, or is, like, or is this more the dad edge? Is it more married couples, or is it just open to any man?
No, but you just put down a heck of an idea.
Yeah,
I'm not even kidding. I will say, so I do have a course, right? I have a 10, this is going to scare people. It's kind of like, if you ever use certain words and we associate with certain things, like if I say budget to people, they're like,
it's
ugh,
like,
or diet, it's
no
like,
budget.
right. But so I can't think of any other way to put it, but, no, I actually I do. I have 10 different skills. I almost said modules, but 10 different skills that we teach men on how to elevate the connection, communication, and intimacy with their wife. Listen, these things do not happen by accident. They don't happen because they wing them, right? And I think we can appreciate God made man and woman very differently in the mental and emotional wiring. Like, listen, one of the beautiful things about men is we are phenomenal problem solvers. Like, we thrive in that. Our entire
Oh
careers
yeah,
and even being an entrepreneur is based on solving somebody else's problem. We love it. We feel good about it. We're contributing to it. We get compensated for it. We get validation for it. We even get measured by it, right? By how many problems we can solve will base on how much money you make, on how many great annual reviews you get, on how many pleased customers you have. When you can drive results and solve people's problems, that's a really good thing. However, that's not what our wives necessarily need about 80% of the time when they're talking to us. But yet that's what we usually want to give, right? So, men speak in that way. And I'll give you an example. If I were to come to you and say, "Hey, Jeff, Jessica and we're just going through a really kind of rough patch right now. We're not really intimate right now. We're not really talking right now. I just feel like we're spinning in different orbits." Now, I am not telling you that because I want you to hear me and I want to just vent to you for no reason. I wouldn't waste my breath, my time, or yours. I'm telling you that because I want advisement from you. I look at you as like, "Hey, I see you and your wife doing these things, and I see you guys really happy. How is it you're doing that? Please help me solve this issue," right? So that's how men are wired. Now, women, on the other hand, when they come and talk to us about anything, it could be something great, it could be something also challenging, but we immediately want to, especially if it's something negative, we want to solve the problem. And we do this, by the way, but because we love them. They don't understand that. We love them. So we want to take away pain. And by taking away pain, we solve problems. Like, well, hey, let me show you how we're going to do this. This would be great. No worries. And you're like, are you even hearing me? Of course I'm hearing you. I'm telling you how we're going to solve this problem. No, you're not hearing me. I don't understand what you're saying. When a woman is talking to us, when our wives are talking to us, most of the time is they just want connection. They just want their three basic needs to be fulfilled, which is I want to be seen by you, right? I want to be heard and I want to feel safe. And if you can fulfill those two, seen and heard, the safety one automatically equals usually, right? So we teach men these skills, and there's 10 skills to communicate. One is being a more empathetic listener. One is going to every conversation with curiosity and appreciation. And the other is building intimacy. And there's micro skills in each one of those three areas. So to answer your question, I have an online course that teaches all that if men want to do their own DIY, do their own work. And then we also teach this in Data Alliance in our mastermind. But yeah, I've never thought about offering it to someone who's about to get married, but it would probably do very, very well there.
Yeah, or you gift this to your kid or your this
Oh yeah.
kid person you know. It's like, dude, just dude, take this quick course. You know, it's gonna
Yeah.
help. No, that's a good idea. You said a few things I wanted to touch back on. I love that you're giving guys skills, and I want to say something since you brought up soccer. So soccer to me was like I just did it because I didn't sign up when I was in kindergarten. My dad just made me do it, you know. So it was just fun. And as I progressed, like it was never a passion of mine. I was like, oh, I can't wait to play high school soccer. It was like, no, my dad started a team outside of high school, select team, and because he wanted to keep me out of trouble. And so then
It's good.
I just did it. And then I was able to make the soccer team, you know, for high school. And then those coaches make you get better. And then I made varsity. Um, and my whole career, and I played 4 years of collegiate and 1 year, you know, afterwards in a USISL semi-professional league. And it was always like this nonchalant thing that I was just doing. I was just good enough. And then I had an amazing year. My sophomore year, our coach Matt Atencio, he brought in three other coaches that were just had played professional or really high level soccer in different countries and in the U.S. And we won a championship that year. And those guys just made us better than ever because they pushed us and they just made us do all this stuff that we wouldn't have done ourselves. You were asking like if a guys just showed up to play, dude. Yeah, you could like scrimmage and there'd be some fun with that, but man, they made us like tactical, you know, assassins, and we won a championship that way. And then
That's
that got
cool.
me into go to Montana State, and it was like, you're really nailing something, that the value of coaching. And I try to harp on that a little bit. We found value, you know, you talk about like marriage counseling or like there's all kinds of counseling out there, but you could also call them coaches. And if you think of it in that light, you know, as men, I used to think of marriage counseling as like, oh, dude, that's shameful, and you need to
Oh
like
yeah.
hide that. Don't tell nobody that, you know. And that's just how I felt. That's just how I thought until I had a buddy tell me, oh, he went to marriage counseling. I'm like, oh, you're gonna tell me that? Um, and then eventually, me and my wife needed it. Right? We got to an impasse where it was like, we are not getting anywhere, and this is always turning into a fight. Like, what do we have? We do not have the skill to get through whatever this is. So we got the help that we needed, and um, so I love that you're giving skills um, and training. And I think you're right. All men need skills and training. I guess I'm saying that. Um, but do you find, and this kind of ties this together, advising men, a lot of guys don't want to talk about their struggle, right? They just kind of handle it. Don't tell a buddy about it. Don't tell anyone. Is that something you find that it's a, I don't know, maybe some guys don't, but once you get broken, you maybe will. but a
No, we
lot of
never run
times,
into that. Guys are open books. I want to go. I want to go back to the answer to that question is every day. Um,
yeah,
and I'll give you an example of that one, but I want to back up a little bit. You said something very, very interesting there, which is, you know, if you're an entrepreneur like you are, like I am, and you hire a business coach, oh man, people are like, nice job, dude. Yeah, great. You should be hiring a business coach. That's phenomenal, right? Somebody to point you in the right direction. Um, in fact, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, it's almost frowned upon. They're like, hey man, who's your mentor? Who's helping you? And by the way, also who are you helping? Right? You should always have somebody, no matter what you're doing in life, have somebody who's ahead of you, someone who's equal to you, and someone you're helping, right? Because the person who's ahead of you, that's the person teaching you. The person who's with you is the one who's like kind of like your battle buddy, like, hey, we're learning this together, or we're going through this together. And then the person behind you always need to be teaching it, right? Because you need to, number one,
that's good.
pay it forward. But number two is when you teach it, you master it, which is good. So in business, if you want to be more fit, like, hey man, I hired a personal trainer. Like that's like a status symbol. If you have a personal trainer, people are like, wow, dude, you have made it if you've got a trainer, right? Same thing with like a fiduciary or a financial advisor, right? Especially like these high end, like, people you actually have to pay out of your pocket to advise you on your money. You're like, wow, man, you're like crushing it, right? Now you go get a marriage therapist. Oh, you and Jessica are in a bad place. What's going on, man? Like,
Why is
and
it
they,
like that?
I don't know. I don't know. And here's the crazy thing. Getting couples counseling is one of the most rewarding and most amazing and underrated things that people can possibly get, because like, if my wife and we've been married, we'll be married 20 years this year. And I would say
Congratulations. That's
thank
awesome.
you. I would say for the first handful of our years of our marriage, we were in the counselor's office. We still see the same guy 20 years. And we were in the counseling office all the time, just fighting about the same big topics, sex and money and all this other stuff. And, I just remember like the counselor, like looking at me a few times being like, come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? And but now we're still seeing, we still see him probably 3 times a year, because for one of two reasons. You don't go to the dentist every 5 years. You should go to the dentist every 6 months. I just went yesterday. I'm 47 years old. I've never had a cavity in my whole life. You know why? Because I go to the dentist. I brush my teeth every day, and I go to the dentist every 6 months religiously ever since I was a kid. And because of that, I don't have any cavities. Now, if I did the opposite, I probably wouldn't have my teeth. And same thing with oil changes, right? With our cars. Like, it's like, hey man, have you ever gone 25,000 miles without an oil change? And they're like, no. Why would I? Well, why would you go 20 years of marriage without any point in the right direction or help? It's the same thing, but we just look at it differently. But getting a point in the right direction, even now, like my wife and I will go 2 or 3 times a year, and we either do it proactively, right? Or we'll look at each other and be like, man, this is a tough spot. It's a tough season, isn't it? It's like we're dealing with these little ones who just are crazy obnoxious. And now we're in the teenage years. I'm really, I'm really kind of lost on a few things. Are you? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, hey, you want to go see Tom? Yeah. And then
I
usually
love it.
all it takes is one session. And Tom's like, oh yeah, here, it's this thing right here in front of you that you didn't see, but I saw it. And then we walk out and be like, okay, there we go. So that's marriage counseling. To me, it's the best money ever spent. But going back to your question of men asking for help, I was on a kickoff call yesterday. We do a kickoff call every week in the Dad Edge Alliance, and there was a guy, and I will tell you the situation I'm going to tell you about is extreme. I haven't seen this one quite extreme yet, and it probably won't be the last. But I would say, just if I were to generalize doing this work for the past 8 years, yeah, guys are like to keep things pretty tight to the chest. They don't like to share what's going on, because for fear that they'll be quote unquote found out. I don't have my stuff together. I'm gonna be found out. And guess what? Being your most authentic self, and I'm not talking about being a feminine weeping sponge. That's not cool either. You know, Sometimes it's okay, but like that's not what really men resonate with. What men really resonate with is like, hey Jeff, I've noticed that you have a phenomenal relationship with your wife. And I want that for my life too. And here, let me tell you kind of some things that are going on in my life. And I'm not proud of this, but here they are. And boom, boom, boom. And then how does that make you feel burdened in any way if I were to do that?
No, I'd be glad to help, glad to
Yeah,
share.
you'd be glad to help. Well, in my mind, right, before I come to you, I'm like, I don't want to burden this guy. And I certainly don't want him to think that I don't have my stuff together with Jessica. That's the story I tell myself. And it's a lie. It is a
Amen.
lie because you're over there being like, dude, how can I help? One of the six basic human needs is contribution. You've got certainty, uncertainty, love, community, growth, and contribution. So if I'm not my most authentic self and come to you for advisement every now and again on something that I think is really good that you do, I'm actually robbing you of one of your six basic needs, is which is contribution, because you're going to walk away from that conversation helping me, and you're going to feel like you're on top of the world, and I'm going to feel better. So we're actually doing a disservice if I don't. And here's the other cool thing too: if I'm authentic and I share with you what's going on in my life, do you feel more comfortable or less comfortable being around me?
Oh, if you're authentic and you're sharing stuff, dude, oh yeah, I'm gonna bounce right back and reciprocate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that and it makes us relatable. It makes us likable.
Oh,
I'm not saying
yeah.
like you need to be like the negative Nelly and everything's falling from the sky, but every now and again you can lean into another brother, right, to help you. And that's one of the beautiful things that men do very, very well. Now, let me explain this. I had this guy on a kickoff call. We do one every Wednesday in the Alliance. Usually there's anywhere from 8 to 20 men, depending on how many guys have joined the previous week. And there was a guy who literally, and he was in his probably 40s, right? And he was just looking at the screen like a deer in the headlights. And if you're on Zoom as much as we are these days, you can pinpoint these things immediately. And so we were going through introductions, and I could tell this guy was nervous. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I was actually on one of the mastermind calls yesterday. He's like, I joined one yesterday before the kickoff call. And because I was real curious, I wanted to dive in, just see what it's all about. And he's like, and 7 minutes in, I just hung up. I just I just left the Zoom meeting. And I've never heard that one. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm just one of those people that like I get very scared to share, and I don't want people to think that I'm less than, and I tend to overthink things and blah blah. And he kind of went into detail. I'm like, and we just loved on him, right? And we were like, man, like, and I was like, well, tell us about your marriage. He's like, it's not that good. I was like, well, what's going on? He's like, well, my wife always tells me that I don't share anything with her, and I'm a locked up box, and she doesn't feel connected to me. And I asked him, I said, I won't use his name. I said, I'll just use another name. I was like, Mike, let me ask you a question. How is this way of operating working out for you, man? How is it serving you? And you just saw him go, it's not. I was like, right. It's not. I was like, what's holding you back? He's like, fear. I was like, fear of what? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I just don't want people to think I don't have my act together. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm worried about something or whatever else. I was like, we asked every guy on the call. I was like, guys, let me ask you a question right now with Mike. Do you like him more or less than you did 5 minutes ago? What do you think all the guys said?
Yeah, more.
Yeah, they're like, dude, like, man, you're being authentic. So basically, what we got him to do is be authentic right there. He didn't even know it. And by doing so, he was more likable, and the guys wanted to open up to him. And by doing that, he felt more comfortable doing it. So we told him, we're like, listen, man, and this is a message for your audience. It's a message for my audience, but this is what I always tell men. I had another guy actually message me. He's in my local area, and he messaged me on Facebook. He's like, hey, man, like, I know you're closing the door to the Alliance here real soon, and you and I actually live in the same area. I've thought about joining for the past couple of years, but I'm too nervous to do it. I'm like, why? Because to me, I've been in this game for a while and I know the benefits of it. I was like, why? And he's like, well, he's like, I just don't really know what it's going to be like, and I'm a bit scared about it, and I just don't really know what to think. And I was like, man, I totally get that. Like, I totally understand where you're coming from, right? We all have those fears. But whenever you feel, this is the message, when you feel that discomfort, that's growth knocking on your doorstep. That
I like
is on the other side of that discomfort is freaking freedom, man. Because once you start to step into that growth, like it's the same thing with fitness, right? You go in the gym, you you have to tear muscles down and get very uncomfortable before they grow. right? It's actually I'm a part of a Bible study every Thursday called Operation Paul. We were talking about this today, which is, there's not a promise from God that you're going to have a pain-free life. So when you're going through the pain, it actually will make you more resilient on the other end. So as hard as it is, try to embrace the pain, because on the other side of this is beauty, right? And that's what I told this guy. I was like, bro, I was like, this is great. I was like, this is great news. You feel uncomfortable? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, because that is growth knocking on your doorstep. That discomfort means you're going to grow. And that's awesome. And here's what I tell you to do. There's no way around it. You just go through it. And he's like, all right, man, let's do this. And he's joining. But I love hearing men say that, hey, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. Man, that's great news, because no one ever got to be great by being comfortable, by being warm and cozy and comfortable, right? You be great because you put yourself through harder things to challenge you.
That's so good. That's really good. I mean, I can go a lot of places with that. That's exactly what like my soccer coaches did. I would
Yeah.
never push myself that hard. They pushed me beyond what I thought I was capable of. Boom,
Yeah.
great results. Um, Gosh, you're touching on many powerful things here. Fears, you said, keeping you down,
Yeah.
and I know that like our mind is wired right to pursue pleasure and avoid pain, to protect itself and not be endangered, right? And we like to get to this, even you even build muscles because your body's like, I don't want this to be hard, so I'm going to make muscles so this is easy if this is what we're doing. Um, but I've really had some big breakthroughs too, where and you kind of only almost need these moments where you are broken a little bit, and it, like the fear or the thing you're hiding comes to the surface, and it's like, today if you deal with this, you're no longer imprisoned, like you were saying. You're going to be free, and you're going to move on and grow. Or it's been there for years, but you get to decide. But it's coming to the surface, and it seems like being part of a group would help, or your group would help bring some of those lies that, why are we thinking this way?
Yeah.
Because it's causing imprisonment, and the fruit of that in your marriage is terrible. You got a bad marriage, you got bad communication. The fruit of that to your kids, well, you're on the pathway to have estranged kids, dude. As soon as they get the chance, they're gone, right? You're not going to have these relationships in 10, 15 years, because you clearly do not have the skills, where being part of a group, having mentorship is going to sharpen that, but bring some of those weaknesses to the surface and say, dude, you don't need that,
I
and
agree.
we're a group of guys that we're in the same boat. We don't want that in our lives. We don't want that in your life. Just come be free of it. We'll help
Yeah.
you. So I love what you're doing. Any thoughts on that? I have a
Yeah.
couple more
So
things.
couple of examples, right, that I think will really hit this home. If you look at a Navy SEAL, he didn't go through basic training only. He went through buds, right? And then some, right? I have I can't say who this is, but a friend of mine's husband is in special forces. Just graduated a year ago. And that guy fascinates me, because I'm like, he told me the majority, what he could about the training, and I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, yeah, man, but this is why we have mission success. He's like, if I didn't go through this, I wouldn't know what I was capable of. And the same thing, like I took martial arts for a long time, and I had this crazy martial arts instructor for about 7 years. This guy was like freaking Sensei Creed from the Cobra Kai, but in a good way. Like, not he wouldn't tell us to go out and sweep anybody's leg or anything like that. But and it wasn't like strike first, fear does not exist in this dojo. But he was hardcore. He could not stand belt factories, and he called other schools belt factories. He always told us, he's like, when I test you for your next belt, it's an experience. It's a rebirth of who you really are. And my white belt to yellow belt test was 8 hours long. I thought I had been destroyed. And then my black
Wow.
brown test, which is the belt before black belt, was 12 hours. I have never been through anything like that in my life. But the cool thing about that is like, how much could like, so for instance, if I know that I could be just beaten down and stripped of everything of what I was physically, mentally, and emotionally through a 12-hour test, what am I going to be like if somebody tries to attack me and I only have 7 seconds to defend myself? I know what I'm capable of, right? I know that I didn't do a couple spin kicks and a couple of, grapple throws and all this other stuff, and I'm good to go. Like I knew, I'm like, wait a second, like I'm not saying I'm invincible by any means, but I know I'm capable of a whole lot more than I thought I was yesterday. And what I'll tell you is that when you go through that fire, through that discomfort, and I'm not, and through Dad Edge, we don't do that to our guys. We're pretty compassionate. We're pretty empathetic, and we meet these guys where they're at. We do push them, right? But at the same time, we equip these guys with skills and tools that they didn't have yesterday, so they can go navigate that marriage that they want, that relationship with their kids that they want. You and I had a conversation right before we hit record today about a friend of mine who just lost his daughter yesterday, like not even 15 hours ago. Here's what I'll tell you. He's one of my best friends. He's one of my partners in Dad Edge. His daughter was 19. This is the most devastating news I've had in a long time, and certainly for him. But here's what I'll tell you. 13 years ago, he lost his wife. He's remarried now and that kind of thing, but he lost his wife very tragically. She was a police officer, and that was hell for him. And for him to now, lose his daughter 13 years later is hell all over again, and then some, because no man should have to lose a child. No woman should have to lose a child. But here's what I'll tell you. You really want a story about walking through the fire? Here's a story. This man, my partner in Dad Edge, has been since 2016. That man, after he lost his wife, he could have drank himself into an oblivion, could have mentally, emotionally, physically checked out of his two daughters' lives, could have completely given up. Here's the other thing, too. My 16-year-old son has a friend who's 17 and has a dad and he lost his mom 8 years ago. His dad lives in the basement of their house. His son, who's
Wow.
17 years old, basically manages the whole house and everything, feeds himself, clothes himself, gets himself up for school, has a job. Dad lives downstairs and barely comes upstairs and doesn't even interact with his son because the depression got the best of him. He just
Wow.
cowered. And listen, that made sense to him. Now, my partner Jason, on the other hand, went the other direction, doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. That man, Jeff, when I say that there's a man walking the earth that was somehow, some way able to build an incredible relationship with his two daughters, like you talk about conversational excellence. His daughters, man, they tell him everything. Everything. He's got the best relationship with his kids of any man I have ever seen. Unfortunately, he lost his oldest daughter in this tragic car accident. It wasn't her fault. But here's what I can tell you about that experience. Because my best friend made that decision to walk through the fire, not give up, and to double down, triple down, and even learn skills of like, hey, these kids don't have a mom. Like, I need to not only be good, I need to be great, and not only be great, but I need to be the best. And I'm willing to do anything it takes to do that. So he did it. He did all the work, all this self-development, personal development, relational development, all these things. And that man developed a relationship with his daughters for the past 13 years of things I have never seen. Amazing. Now here's where I'll end. My friend is going through absolute hell right now. The worst nightmare any man will ever face. My hope for him, someday he will have some peace, even if it's a fraction of peace. And there will come a day where he'll be able to look back on this and be able to finally breathe again. And when that day happens, what I hope for him and what the rest of the world and Dad Edge got to see, because everyone at Dad Edge knows him, is that perhaps he can sit with some comfort knowing that I had a short time with my daughter, but oh my gosh, I don't have any regrets. Like none. Like it was the best relationship he ever had and ever could have made of it. I know I said that was the last thing, but I'll say this. He screenshotted the text message that he sent her, the last text message he sent her, which was just a couple hours before this tragic thing. I love you very, very, very much. And I feel so appreciative that I got to see you not only once today, but twice today. And I can't wait to see you for dinner next week. How many kids or how many relatives, friends, family, or whatever, they pass away, they're taken from us. And the last thing we said to them wasn't anything meaningful. Maybe it was something harsh, and we don't have a way to take that back. But that's not the way my friend Jason operated. And that's my hope. And that's not only I share that story because that's my hope for all men. You know, to if I could emotionally shake you by the shoulders right now, your life and as you know it right now can be taken from you right now. It can be taken from you in moments. Your life I could easily go, knock on wood, and for saying this out loud, please God, don't ever let this happen. I could go from 4 kids to 3 kids today. And did I leave anything? Do I want to put my head down tonight and know that I left things on the table? The answer to that is no. That's why our tagline for Dad Edge is live legendary, because that's exactly what it means. You leave nothing on the table. You leave nothing to chance. You learn everything you can. You go at this thing full speed or nothing. And that's the way we do it, man.
I love that. Yeah, you're speaking to my heart. Um, it's still tough to process, what Jason's going through right now. I love that you shared that side of him, that he is living like the best he can day to day, with the relationships he's had with his daughters. That definitely touches my heart because I told you uh, that I've kind of failed in all areas of fatherhood. I feel like, um, but that same thing kind of hit me. That Jeff, what if you or one of your kids isn't even going to be here in a month or a year? Look how you're living. Like that's the last thing they remember of you, or that's what you remember of them. And I think that's powerful motivation to, even if you're the guy down in the basement, right? And you've gone through something tragic, you don't have to stay down there. Get help, right? And I believe groups like yours can help men, right, to some degree. And then some guys, you need more advanced, specialized counseling and help, and that's out there for them. And I agree with you. I challenge people to take the help, like the Dad Edge is offering uh, help. There's resources and friends that you have. Take the help because you're right. Relationships matter, and you don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow. Um, yeah, I don't know how much well. So the crazy thing, Larry, is I've been a firefighter for 13 years. Um, what you're saying is was pressed on my heart too last year, and I quit my career before I had a job business lined up to purchase. Just so you know, and my audience now knows, which is very unwise in a lot of people's eyes. But it was because I've been working so much and I did shift work that I have a 13-year-old son, and he's like in this strange time, right? And he's going this way, and I feel like I'm trying to bring money and go, I'm this way. And it's like this course of action, if this keeps going, I'm gonna hardly know him. He doesn't trust me to like share his heart with, like you're saying. And it's like I want to be him to be open with me. I want to be open with him. Well, we're just not there. And it was like I felt wisdom was leading me. It's like, Jeff, like you got things situated. You can go a year without working. go a year without working, just go rebuild the family, right? And hopefully it doesn't take that long to get a business, but because I don't want a strange kid. I don't want broken relationships. I don't want where I'm home half the time. Like I was working so much overtime. It's like I'm not there. I'm just not even at the house. My wife's just running the whole thing, and that is one of the downsides of that career, and doing shift work. Um, but anyways, but that really resonates with me to keep my relationships right. I was like, dude, we can figure this money thing out, but I don't want to lose. Um, it's like the Father's flame, what I'm passing on to Isaiah and Caleb and Charity. Uh, I don't want to lose that because I wasn't there. I don't have the skills to, uh, I've struggled with anger. Like, how a dad can get loud and it's like, well, then your kids like back off and they get quiet and reserved. And it's like, I've done that where back when me and my wife were going through our thing, it was like, I was just loud all the time, every little thing, and that was damaging. And so it's like, I want the Lord to kind of repair those years that the locusts have eaten. And let's have new years where this is a new me that's moving forward and doing what a dad should do, protecting them. But I'm a safe place. I'm not the dangerous person um, in the home. I'm a dangerous person trying to get in my home, but not the danger to my own home. And it's like I think we can sometimes be the wrecking ball in our own home, uh, because we don't have the skills. We're not called out to, and we're wrecking ball to our wife and our kids and our own self. But anyways, I appreciate what you're sharing.
Can I
Really
reflect?
resonates with me. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
can I reflect on it? Because what you just said there was really freaking powerful, man. And you used the word dangerous 3 times. I want to talk about men raising young men. And by the way, you got daughters, right? And
Yeah.
if you have daughters, this is even more important that you're a good father to a young man. And part of that is leading, right? Dangerous. A boy in the window of 11 to 15, or I'm sorry, 11 to 16, they have 2 paths that they're going to take. They're either going to become a dangerously good man or a dangerously bad one. And this is the window of time where they're not necessarily a boy and they're not necessarily a man, and they're in sort of limbo. I still do little boy things, but now I'm also doing man things. Well, which one am I? I'm not really sure. Well, my friends give me a whole lot of validation depending on what action I take, what good or bad. Most of the time bad, unfortunately. We have this is going to sound self-serving and I don't mean it to at all, but I want to hit a point here that I think has been missed by men and sons for a few generations now. And that's this beautiful thing of rite of passage. We host 4 events a year now called Dangerously Good Men. And it's for a retreat for fathers and sons. And it's exactly for this. It's for dangerously good men. There's a faith-based element to it as well. It's hosted by one of my partners. And it's an incredible event for father and son because, you know, boys in that in that age range, if a dad is not around, even if he's physically around, like you do shift work, you're physically not there, but there's a lot of men, and and I know it, Jeff, that are home every night, but they're not home every night. They're barely home. So when a boy is looking to his dad, because deep in the heart of a boy, I want to be led by my dad. I want to be guided from my dad. I just don't want to say that out loud because then what?
Mm.
Right. And even if they feel it, right? They don't know how to say it, but that's what they truly, truly want. Right. I want to be led by my dad. Now, the cool thing about this retreat is it's 2 days up in Bend, Oregon. And it's this whole process of helping young boys aim in the right direction. And there are pillars that we teach them while we're there, along with the dad, because the dad, once they leave this retreat, we give you a map on how to go do this. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but right here on my desk, I have 6 arrows. Each one of them have a meaning: honorable, enterprising, integrity. Those are some of the things that we teach. Those are the pillars. And then I have a 15-year-old I just took through it over the next 3 years. He will earn one of those arrows. So this rite of passage doesn't start and stop at the weekend. It continues on until they're 18. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, and I'm going to bestow upon my son, because we just went through this at the beginning of December together. I went through it as a participant. I'm going to bestow him the arrow of enterprising. Enterprising is you find a way when things are hard, right?
Mm.
You find a way when obstacles are huge, right? You find a way and you finish what you start. My 15-year-old, bless his soul, man, not into drugs. He's ended friendships over drugs. Wants no part of it. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't vape, doesn't do weed, none of that. He's a fit football player, and then he got into wrestling. This past wrestling season was the hardest thing I think I've seen him go through athletically, because he had challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge. And the whole time we were like, if he wanted to give up, we wouldn't let him. But if he said, "Hey, I'm ready to ring the bell," like, we probably would be like, "That's understandable." So he got injured at the beginning of the year, messed up his knee. Then he messed up his shoulder. Then he recovered from that. Then he got COVID, recovered from that. Then he got ringworm. Then he got impetigo, and then he got his shoulder hurt again. But he still went the distance of the season, and he still wrestled. And he finished his season at 11-11. So he won 11, lost 11. But it became like a joke. Like, and you could tell, like, he didn't complain outright, but you could tell he was so challenged. Like, he was just like, oh, for the love of God, like, what else is going to happen to prevent me from either wrestling at all or wrestling at my best? Because it did cost him a few tournaments, and he couldn't participate in a few tournaments because of that. He couldn't participate, but he kept coming back, and he finished. So I'm going to give him this arrow, and I'm going to take him on a hike. I'm going to read him a letter, and I'm going to give him this arrow, and I'm going to say, this is for enterprising. And here's what I saw you do. Right. And these are the lessons you learned. You had so much grit. I know you didn't finish the season with the record that you wanted, but oh my gosh, that's not the point. The point is you finished, you overcame, you didn't even complain. Somehow, some way, you kept finding a way. Can you imagine? I don't know a lot of adults that do that, right? They'll be like, oh, I hurt my knee, I'm out, right? But him just kept going. But this is the type of characteristics, like the character, the integrity, the grit, the work ethic, the faith element, all these things that are so important that these fathers and boys can constantly dial back and be like, hey, do you remember when we were dangerously good men? They're talking about enterprising, talking about grit and getting through hard things. Well, congratulations. You did it. And this is how it's going to serve you for the rest of your life. Because this is not going to be the last time you're going to go through seasons of horrible challenge, and you're going to feel like ringing the bell. And always look back on this rite of passage and this moment where you've gotten this arrow, where you have earned this right to have this and celebrate this moment, right? And the whole arrow thing, like, it's meant to, they earn 6 of them until the time they're 18, and you put them into a shadow box, and it's meant to give them this when they leave for college. And it's something they can always look at and be like, because when they're on their own and in college, or even if they don't decide not to go to college, they're going to have that on their wall, and they're going to be able to think back to all those reps and all those experiences and all those things, and they're going to be able to navigate life so much better. And here's the cool thing, bonus, they have a heck of a relationship with their dad because of it.
That's solid. I love it. That's good. I did something with my son where I took him on a trip. I like how you just planned out that giving him an object to have, right, that you could put on the wall to see and remind them, because yeah, they're going through some storms, or they're going to go through some stuff in college and get tempted to do whatever.
Of course.
I like that. That's powerful. I want to, while I have you, I want to throw out this idea, and it's like I want just a community of men, like, to be challenged, but like there's this balance of being okay with yourself but not okay with where you're at, right? And so you were talking earlier about like we all kind of want to hide our stuff to seek perfection. You didn't say that, but you just said we're hiding like our failures, or maybe our weaknesses from each other. But so I'm just saying, I think we're doing it because there's a desire for perfection. And this is what I want to say. I think we do have perfection in this sense, and we need to kind of embrace it. Like, you are perfect. You are the perfect father for your kids. No one could substitute or be better than you, the person that is their father. Like, that to me is unequivocally true. That doesn't mean you do everything perfectly or everything right. It's just you are the perfect man for the job. There's no perfect person to be married to your wife, and if you're divorced and remarried, well, okay, your current situation. If you have step kids or you've adopted, everyone who's under your home now, you are the perfect husband and father for. So embrace that. Now, you don't have all the skills per se to, we're just all over the board with strengths and weaknesses of being a husband and father. Now you need to continue to go get the rest of the skills, because you don't want another man raising your kids, right? You're the perfect father. You don't want another man marrying your wife, right? Because you can't handle finances, and you go through this crazy emotional thing and you want to get a divorce. No, like, every piece of a marriage and a relationship with your kids can be fought for and fixed, right? Um, at least I guess that's what I believe. So, what do you think of this aspect? Like, we technically are the perfect person. You
Yeah.
just don't have all the skills per se to
Yeah.
fulfill that, but go get them and do better. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So as a father and a husband, what I'll tell you, let's go back to sports, right? Do you know who Tom Brady's backup quarterback is by chance?
No.
I don't either. I don't either. Does Tom Brady ever throw a perfect game?
I don't think so.
No. No, he makes mistakes, right? The player that makes the mistakes is the player on the field. The player that has a flawless game is the one on the bench. If you are making mistakes as a husband and father, congratulations. You have arrived, right? Now that's just half the battle. If you're not making any mistakes as a dad or husband, you better put your big boy pants on and get in the game, right? Go
Yeah.
get your hands dirty. Go spend time with your kids. Go learn some of these skills that we're talking about. Now, I just interviewed an amazing gentleman. He reached out to us. I didn't know anything about him, but his name, I couldn't resist not having this guy on the podcast just for his name. His name was Figs O'Sullivan. And I was just so it's a shortened, condensed version of his real name, but everyone calls him Figs. But he's a brilliant licensed family therapist, really knows the ins and outs of marriage and kids and all this. And I think I remember asking him, I was like, what is the secret to like a great relationship? And he's like, that's a great question. He's like, the secret to a great relationship is not having a perfect relationship. It's actually in the repair. And I don't know what it was about that quote, but I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was just like, well, you're going to screw up. You're either going to sweep it under the carpet, or I'm the dad, you're the kid, shut your mouth, right? I'm right, you're wrong, which by the way, I was raised that way. And I think a lot of us were. Or it's in the repair. It's, I'm going to own what I did. I'm going to come forward with my mistakes. I'm going to be humble and tell you I'm sorry, right? Now, I've never heard that before, but I'll tell you over the past 10 years, I've gotten really, really professional and proficient at apologizing to my kids for being a jerk. And, I still have bad moments. In fact, sometimes, man, it gets in my head so bad because I do this work that I'm hard on myself, like super crazy hard on myself. Sometimes if I lose my patience with my kids, I'm like, who am I to do this work? I'm a joke. Like, this is ridiculous. But the thing is that I know better. When I step back and zoom out, my batting average with bad moments before Dad Edge, my batting average is probably 200. For every 10 at bat, I'd hit two. Well, now it's probably more like seven. I'm batting like 700. I still have bad moments, but they're minor compared to what they were. But I actually brought my 16-year-old son in for what we call a Dad Edge Alliance Q&A, and we record those. That's our Wednesday show where I take questions from the group and that kind of thing, or we take questions from the group, and then we launch them as a podcast. And this theme emerged about like, what do we do when we have a bad moment? And I talked about apology. Well, it just so happened my kids had a snow day that day. And I was like, hey, guys, we're fresh off the press. I had a horrible night last night with my kids. I was in a bad mental headspace. I wasn't mean, I wasn't like abusive or anything like that, but I was short, I was crabby, I was curt, I was distant, I was cold, I was all those things. And then at the end of the night, I was like, my God, you're acting like a child. And I went to my kids and my wife and I was like, guys, I'm sorry. I was like, bad day, no excuse. I was like, I've treated y'all just not great today. I've been short, I've been insensitive, I haven't even really been polite. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And my 16-year-old was like, yeah, what happened? Like, what happened today? And I told him, and he's just like, it's okay. We still love you. Well, then the next day I'm doing this Q&A. And I was like, guys, I was like, let me bring my son in here because he was on the receiving end of all this. I just want to hear what he has to say. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I mean, I've been doing this work long enough that, if you would have 5 years ago, it would have made me really nervous. Like, oh my God, what's my son going to say about me publicly? I don't care. I don't care anymore at all. In fact, the more you air out my dirty laundry, the better. So I brought him in. I'm like, hey, Ethan, I was like, you want to come in here and jump on this podcast? He's like, yeah. He had no clue what he was getting into. So we basically, we primed him. We told him we were talking about. I was like, hey, I want you to give your perspective on what happened yesterday. He's like, oh man, you had a really bad day. You were kind of like really short with us and crabby and distant and cold. I was like, yeah, I was. I was like, and I'm sitting there like I have 50 guys on this Q&A or whatever. And I was like, well, what did it feel like when I apologized? I did not know what he was going to say. Dude, he said something that blew us all away. My guys on the call were like, this is the best Q&A we've ever had. My son said this. He goes, Dad,
Wow.
when you apologize, you're being a man. He's like, when you apologize, you're being a good, manly man. He's like, a man that doesn't apologize is a coward. And I was like, it's one of those moments, man, as a dad, where you're like, you don't hear your son articulate that to you, and you don't hear him articulate it to a group. And when he said that, and I didn't prime him with anything. That came right off his heart. I was so proud of him. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was proud of him for a couple of reasons. Selfishly, I was proud that he looks at me because I feel like an idiot sometimes when I apologize to him. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this kid's gonna think I'm such an idiot, right? But in his eyes, he's like, my dad's being a man and he's owning this. And that's what I want to be. And that's why I was just like, dude, that's what you think? He's like, yeah. But here's the other thing, the selfless part, right? The lessons. As he gets and my son, my 16-year-old and my 15-year-old, they will be the first when I call them out on something, their response is, yeah, no excuses. I did that. I'm sorry. And here's what I'm gonna do about it. And they're serious about it. It's not fluff. But if he's learning that and he's articulating that, my hope is, and I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, that's the way he's gonna operate. He's gonna remember stating that out loud. And when it comes time for him to apologize to his kids, his friends, his wife, or whatever, this is what a man does. I'm not going to be a coward. I'm going to be a man. And I think that it just warmed my heart, man. Like it definitely was just like poured out my dirty laundry for my guys, but that's okay. That's how we learn. But I thought that was really cool.
Man, that is a good testimony. I'm guessing you're feeling good that your son is picking that up. I'm glad you said that because I do the same thing. I'm like, God, I feel like I just apologize all the time. Like,
All the
and it,
time. Yeah.
and it, but you saying that and me saying it, it's like, well, that should be normal then,
Right.
right? Like in the
Exactly.
community of men, it's like, that's normal. So, man, Larry, I really appreciate you coming on. This is so valuable to all the people who are going to listen. For me personally, I really resonate with what you guys are doing, and will be a supporter of the Dad Edge for sure. So, thanks again for coming. If you guys want to reach out to Larry, you got him on Instagram at the Dad Edge, or head out to the website, thedadedge.com. And for you fathers out there and people, just you need to be moving forward. That's really what it's about. Put a little bit of energy and effort. You have resources. Now you learned about the Dad Edge. Um, there's really no excuses. Get out of the basement and get into the life that you really were meant to live. So
That's good.
we'll end it. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.